3-month campaign and she was supposed to introduce herself to the American people. No wonder people were Googling, did Joe Biden drop out? And so...
No. No. You're saying 3 months wasn't long enough? It was too long.
Apparently, some people still haven't fully accepted Kamala Harris's defeat in last year's election.
We don't know in Britain, for instance, when you have a short election, it's not like you don't know who the leader of the party is for months and years before that.
But you're either the person who's Googling the day before, did Biden drop out, or you know in a week. You know, did anyone in this audience not know enough about Kamala Harris pretty much after a week?
8 months later, many are still blaming everything except Harris herself. But Bill Maher disagrees. He believes she deserves a fair share of responsibility for the loss, and he made that clear when several Democrats attempted to defend her on his show. Let's break it down.
The thing the candidates, especially the Democrats, do to get voters annoys them. The constant texting. Did you get the texts like from Tim Walz every 5 minutes? And like always begging for money and knocking on doors. We've got people knocking on doors. People don't want knocking on your door. Who in this day and age wants someone knocking on? Kids don't even like it when a phone call? That's like too much of a invasion of their privacy.
Maher outlined several reasons he believes voters struggle to connect with Harris. He argued that her messaging failed to resonate with average Americans. Instead of presenting a clear, consistent vision, Democrats often focused on issues that felt disconnected from everyday concerns. According to Maher, when that strategy failed, the party didn't recalibrate. Instead, it leaned into messaging that many voters found confusing or unconvincing.
Done anything yet, but I understand the
This was the problem. You know, there was a 2014 study that showed that Fortune 500 companies were more likely to pick a female CEO if the company was struggling, basically setting women up for the big job, but to also fail. If they did well, fine. But if they failed, like, look, we have a female CEO while failing. And that's what I feel like they did to Kamala Harris. When Biden refused to step aside and not run again, he was supposed to be that bridge. He backed off on that promise due to arrogance. And then he drops out after a catastrophic debate performance, and they set Kamala Harris up to fail.
One defense raised on the show suggested Harris was suddenly thrust into a difficult position. Critics, however, pointed out that she had served 4 years as vice president, hardly an unknown figure. Maher pushed back on the idea that voters simply didn't know her. His argument was straightforward. The electorate had ample time to evaluate her record and make a decision.
No. You're saying 3 months wasn't long enough? It was too long.
It was long enough.
It was long enough.
If they had a primary...
It's not that they didn't have time to introduce. They met someone and didn't like them.
If they had had a primary, they wouldn't have picked her. And if they had, she would have been able to rough out those edges that then she basically has to start from scratch with a campaign team she didn't hire that didn't like her, right? It was his team. And so I wonder if that next Democratic person, maybe someone's not even on our radar yet. Because frankly, when you look at the history of who's, there's two types. The one who waited in line, who was next in line, and then there's the one who comes out. That's Obama, that's Clinton, that's Reagan to some extent.
Another claim was that Harris was set up to fail due to broader issues within the Democratic campaign. Some argued she inherited political challenges that were impossible to overcome. Others countered that she benefited from significant media exposure and institutional support. The debate ultimately centered on whether her defeat stemmed from circumstance or campaign execution.
I'm going to side with Sarah about this one thing. If you're the sitting vice president for a president who has, throughout his entire term in office, been sitting at about somewhere between a 35 and 40% approval rating. People view the Biden administration as a failure. We can have a long discussion about whether they are right about that, about the economy, but the perceptions of the economy were that people thought inflation was too high, people thought we were on the wrong track, 75% wrong track numbers, and this huge inflation overhang. You're the sitting vice president, and you get put on elevated to the top of the ticket 107 days ahead of the election. I think that is a very high degree of difficulty put on anybody, and I do not think she is the perfect candidate. I tend to agree with Sarah that probably in a fully litigated primary, she probably would not have been the Democratic nominee, but we'll never know that.
Economic concerns also entered the conversation. Commentators who once praised the administration's economic recovery later acknowledged that inflation and rising costs were major voter frustrations. Maher appeared skeptical of attempts to retroactively shift blame to economic conditions alone. His position suggested that voters respond not just to circumstances, but to how leaders communicate solutions.
Ever been anybody who's had the difficulty of that situation, elevated that late in the campaign?
Why? Democrat would have needed to run away from
Bill,
the
I don't know if you know this, but the vice president of the United States is basically
supposed
shoved in a broom closet for 3.5 years.
I know.
Like, you couldn't.
She was more popular in there.
Yes, well.
I mean, this idea that the idea in a mass media age that 107 days is not long enough to know somebody.
You are way overestimating the American people in terms of what their ability. No. You have someone like Donald Trump has become a universally known, understood, loved by some, hated by others over the course of being omnipresent for 8 years.
Okay.
Barack Obama becomes president of the United States after running for 2 years as president, runs a 50-state primary, is on television, does dozens of Democratic debates.
Maher also addressed Harris's leadership responsibilities, including her involvement in immigration discussions. Critics argued that her handling of high-profile assignments did not inspire public confidence. Additionally, missed opportunities to engage in broader media conversations were seen as lost chances to connect with undecided voters.
Ever watched this show? But I had Michael Douglas on this week.
Yeah.
At the top, we were talking about this, and he made a very good point that every other country in the world can do it in months, sometimes weeks. Why can every other country do it in that short a period of time? Are they all that so much brighter than America? I don't think so.
Well,
mostly parliamentary. I mean, there's like literal reasons, right? We don't have a parliamentary system.
I mean,
we also have a First Amendment. We don't make people campaign this whole time. The American people want to give them $20, and so they can afford it. I mean, small dollar donors are arguably the worst thing that's happened to our politics, as it turned out.
It's a small dollar donor didn't make $20 billion. No,
a lot of it.
Harris initially benefited from historic milestones and strong media attention. However, critics argue that broader party messaging often overshadowed her ability to establish a distinct identity. At a time when many voters were focused on economic stability and daily costs of living, campaign messaging may not have aligned with those priorities.
The person who's Googling the day before, did Biden drop out? Or in a week. Did anyone in this audience not know enough about Kamala Harris pretty much after a week to make a decision? Yeah, it's ridiculous. We just get sicker of them.
What? So
how are you going to tell people they
say
can't
the
talk
same
about politics?
What?
How with free speech that I know you love?
Yeah.
How are you going to limit people's ability to run for office?
I'm not limiting. We're not making a law.
Bill, is there somehow ability to reduce the amount of money involved in politics?
Get rid of super PACs by making it no limits, full disclosure. 24-hour disclosure.
We could fix democracy in a minute. Get rid of gerrymandering, get rid of money in politics, get rid of the electoral college. No, none of that is. We're going to keep working with this constipated system that we live with.
Maher made an observation about modern politics. In today's fast-paced media environment, candidates often have only seconds to make a lasting impression. Clear, memorable messaging matters. He contrasted this with slogans that resonate strongly across voter bases. The question raised was whether Harris's campaign delivered a similarly compelling and unifying message.
The question is that no people were late deciders in the election.
No, they were. I talked about them last week. Christmas Eve shoppers,
so those people apparently needed longer than 90 days.
They would have been undecided.
They always would have been.
Exactly. That's why I call them. I called them, John, I said this last week, I called them Christmas Eve shoppers. My father was one. People who don't buy their presents until the Christmas Eve night. He would go into the store, and he wouldn't feel like he could do it until he was fully in the spirit. You had to be in the store on Christmas Eve with Santa and all the fucking elves and everything that was going on.
When some argued that Harris simply didn't have enough time to persuade undecided voters, Maher dismissed that explanation. In an era of constant news coverage and extended campaign cycles, voters have unprecedented access to candidates. His conclusion was blunt. The issue wasn't time, it was connection. According to Maher, Harris failed to present a clear, persuasive vision that inspired broad confidence. Blaming timing, economic conditions, or media narratives may avoid accountability, but it does little to address the deeper issue.